Well, good afternoon, Smart City Expo Atlanta. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Kellye Britton, and I'm the Director of Operations and Programming for the Harvard Debate Council Diversity Project. And we'd like to thank Smart City, its partners and sponsors, for having us here this afternoon. It is definitely an honor to represent the city that we love so very much on this stage with you today. I'd like to introduce you to a group of young people seated here in the front. This is the Harvard Diversity Project Class of 2020.
Yeah.
And along with our beautiful group of young people, our current class, we've got a couple board members here with us today. We'd like to thank our board treasurer, Sarah Pruitt of Bank of America, who's seated here with us today. And board member J.T. Liddell of Atos, longtime supporter of the organization as well. So welcome to the Changing of the Guard, Millennial Voices in Making Cities Smart. Today we're going to talk to a few of those voices and gain some perspective from the people who will be most impacted by the innovation that you see around you here today. But before we speak with them, please welcome our founder and CEO, Mr. Brandon Fleming, who will share a few words with us.
By now at this point of the conference, of the myriad themes that exist here at this convention, more than likely you've already heard the terms diversity and inclusion. But let's be honest. What once began as a noble pursuit has now become mere platitudes, romanticized, politicized, and reduced to a mere word that people say, but rarely understand the context. However, it's very important for us to note here that diversity and inclusion is not just about race and it's not just about gender, but it's also about age. Not too long ago, just a couple of months actually, I had the wonderful opportunity to sit in the presence of very prominent national political figures. And at this conference, we were talking about social and economic mobility for the city of Atlanta and the entire nation. And there were two things that occurred that were very striking to me. The first is that I noticed that somebody mentioned something that was very powerful. And they were talking about the importance of representation. And they said for everybody in this room, whoever's not here and whoever's not present essentially does not matter because they do not have a voice and they do not have a place. And as I looked around, I saw people of many ages, of many races. As I looked around, I saw people of many ethnicities, but I saw one particular gap, and that was our youth. And then something else happened that was very striking. They were talking amidst each other, and they were sharing that they wanted to figure out what is it that we as adults can do to reach the next generation. And they were talking about how we get kids engaged with school, how we get kids engaged with social and political affairs. They said, what is it that we can do? And they were all startled by my answer. I looked at them and I said, nothing. There's nothing that you can do. However, there's something that they can. A smart city recognizes that in order to prepare for the problems of tomorrow, it must understand today the importance of changing the guard. Ladies and gentlemen, the guard is shifting. And from the plains of social, political, and economic prosperity, there is a great emergence. And that great emergence are young people who have taken upon themselves the mantle of change. Young people who have now been regarded as the voice of their generation. It's young people who have decided that they're not going to be the problem, but they're going to be the solution. And it is absolutely my honor to present to you a group of young people who have become the epitome and a tapestry of Black excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the voices of the Harvard Diversity Project.
What makes a city smart? Is a city smart because Forbes ranks it best in transportation development?
Is the city smart because it garners 90,000 new residents every year from all over the world with unique backgrounds and perspectives?
Is a city smart because it's home to major research institutions and universities?
Is a city smart because it has $1.2 billion stadiums and 37 skyscrapers that strive to reach out to graze the sky? Well, then why is it that only billions of emissions from industrial pollution only strive to degrade the environment in which these cities are placed?
Well, then maybe a city smart because it's home to more than 14,000 tech companies constructing infrastructure to evolve what we know.
But guys, I think we should look past the numbers for a second. In fact, I'm going to tell you all a story. I'm going to tell you all a story about a guy who's partially blind. I'm going to tell you a story about a guy who can barely see the world in front of him. Now, this guy who's partially blind had every reason to quit. He was put in one of the most inauspicious situations one could ever be put in. This guy went to some of the most underperforming schools in the entire state, elementary, middle, and high school, all underperforming. This guy grew up in one of the worst zip codes economically in the entire state. I'm talking about destitution at an unparalleled rate. And on top of all those things, they put this guy in remedial classes at the onset of his educational career because nobody thought that he could keep up. But this was no normal guy, you see. He had a vision for the world, even though his sight was retreating. He had a vision for the world, even though his sight was retreating. And in the words of Helen Keller, the only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision. And I assure you, this guy, he had a vision. He was going to stop at nothing. Let me tell you how this guy overcame some of his challenges. I told you he went to a bad school, so what did he start doing? He started sneaking textbooks home. He knew what the teacher was going to teach 2 weeks before she taught it. He didn't let his schooling get in the way of his education. I told you this guy grew up in a poor neighborhood. I told you everyone around him was poor, so what did he do? He got together every nickel and dime, and he started his own business, one that sells little trinkets and motivation. And I got a chance to meet this guy, and he handed me one of his products one day, and he said, man, always wear this over your heart. It means a lot to me. I looked back at him. I said, dude, you're a rock star. I said, dude, you're a rock star. I told you this guy was put in remedial classes at the onset of his educational career, but we know from the past things that he didn't give up then. By the time he got to 6th grade, he was reading on a 12th grade level. You know why? In his closet, he had a stack of magazines and books stacked a mile high. He read 20 pages a day. He said it'd keep a dead brain away. Now, it's obvious this guy knows how to overcome challenges, and this guy was going to stop at nothing. But when I got a chance to meet this guy, he told me there was one thing he thought that he could never, ever do. He said, man, I don't ever think I could step on an Ivy League campus. He said, man, I don't ever think I could reach the upper echelons of society. And I said, dude, what do you mean? He said, man, what I'm surrounded by won't let me be successful. You see, he started to let his situation get in the way of his matriculation. He started to let his situation get in the way of his matriculation. And I looked back at him in that moment and I said, dude, you are a rock star. He said, yeah, I may be a rock star, but right now I feel like I'm on the ground and the rocks are holding me down. I said, come on, man. But nevertheless, he persisted. He found a program that would take him to an Ivy League campus over the summer. He applied. He delineated every single program and every single initiative that he had started. He got in, and 10 months later, he took his first step on the campus of Harvard University. He did all these things. And so he went through all the trials and tribulations, all the challenges, all the ups and downs. He did all those things just to come here and deliver this speech here to you today. Hi. But as charming as my story may seem, it shouldn't be the norm. And if there's one thing I've learned throughout the entirety of my life is that we cannot force things. You can't force things. See, a river does not erode rock because of its mere strength, but because of its persistence, because of its constant push. Our city isn't going to be smart just by building taller skyscrapers and climbing rankings. We're going to get smarter through our persistence. We've got to persist. Now, ambition is the path to success. And every plan announced this week has ambition, and my story had ambition, but I assure you, persistence is the vehicle that would take us there. So our job ought to be as a city to use our persistence to ensure no matter what a man's vision encapsulates, no matter whether he's blind or not, they can accomplish whatever is inside of it. You know, a famous inventor had 1,000 inventions before his big break. He had 1,000 failures before his big break. The 1,001st invention was the light bulb. And that guy's name was Thomas Edison. And Mr. Edison had a common saying. He would always say that vision without action is just hallucination. So my question to you all is, what will we do to ensure that our city never, ever, ever hallucinates?
Thank you, Xavier. Vision. A necessary step one that allows us to put the focus on the future. However, that vision alone can't catapult us into a smart city's future. Laney, tell us a little bit about what that determination turns into.
Well, if we really want to talk about persistent determination that leads towards innovation, why don't we start by taking the time to examine the city that we're all currently in? The city of Atlanta, home to mass Fortune 500 companies, such as Southern Company and Park Mobile. Atlanta is the 6th fastest growing business hub and city in the entire nation. A colorful exhibition of what the outcomes of passion can truly create. Its people have a relentless desire and motivation to make visible activism and paint a picture of a better tomorrow. Speaking of painting a canvas of change, don't even get me started on the amount of cultural pride the foundation of this city holds, because you already know that down here, we like to party. A baseline for the works of Martin Luther King and multicultural spaces to flourish and thrive. The boundaries to which diversity and inclusion extend here are virtually infinite. And if you want to take it back to talking to the numbers, I mean, Atlanta surely has it all. Ranked by Forbes as the 11th best place to start a business or a career, with 80,000 jobs being added to the job market every year, the second highest boom rate in big city economies since 2016, with 18% of households earning an annual income of $150,000. The numbers look convincing, right? Everything appears to add up. All right, well, let me ask you this. How can it be that Atlanta's poverty rate sits at an unsettling 24%? Let that sink in for a moment. Out of the 486,290 names, faces, and individuals that live right here, 1 out of every 4 people are classified as being poor. If I were to take the time to pick out every 4th person seated here in front of me today, that would only be a glimpse into the bigger picture seen every day. Take a moment to look from your left and to your right at your fellow brothers and your fellow sisters. Can you see how truly startling that statistic is? Now I want you to imagine that sheer impact within a family, a community, and an entire region. Maybe that will allow you to see the image a little bit clearer. Looks alone can be deceiving. Instead of just focusing on the outside, what really needs to be done to create a smart city is introspection from within. Atlanta is the single most unequal large city in the entire United States. It seems as though somehow, while trying to cross over the bridge of prosperity to the likes of success, we have failed to recognize the huge gap of inequity that lies beneath our own very feet. Atlanta, home to blooming of wealth, is also the very city that is held back by the constricting hands of poverty, threatening to encapsulate its people and wither away its credibility. A child born poor in the Atlanta area is less likely to outgrow that said poverty than other children in other big cities. And unfortunately, unlike Xavier's story before, this statistic ends a little bit differently. You see, in fact, instead of becoming a triumphant story of overcoming obstacles and breaking down barriers, you see, in my city of Atlanta, this trend sort of becomes a trickle-down effect, building up the very walls, brick by brick, to prevent people from looking through the window of tomorrow. A city is more than just facts. What went from lifting a city from the shackles of mediocrity has now shifted to an endless cycle of grappling socioeconomic stance. What was daydreaming of what could be is now looking for ways to survive what you have, what the future could have held for young minds like me, is now obsolete due to the impact of solely focusing on just the numbers. A city is a system, a wheel, propelled by the innovation within people that is sparked by the inspiration found within their hearts, keeping the rhythm of the city alive and beating in return. However, there is one drawback to this: inertia. For those of you in the audience who aren't aware or maybe aren't science nerds like me, allow me to illuminate you for just a second. Inertia is the tendency for an object at rest to stay at rest unless acted upon by a greater force. And applying this concept to the question at hand, much like a city without perpetual motion is experiencing inertia, a dream without a plan is merely just sleep. So now the question quickly becomes, how can we tap into this potluck of inspiration, innovation, and intel that we know exists within the people of not only Atlanta, but also cities worldwide? How do we keep a city's people in motion?
That's powerful, Laney. I think the word that comes to mind based on what you shared is momentum. How do we build each member of the smart city in order to maintain this movement? We have to strengthen and empower through the cornerstone of what smart cities are built on, and that's education. Keith, enlighten us.
Motion, an essential part of every city. But what determines the direction this motion is going is our education. In order for a smart city to be created, we need smart economies. For smart economies, we need smart businesses. For smart businesses, we need smart people. And these smart people are only products of our education system. But we're all smart, aren't we? At least, that's what our parents tend to tell us. See, everyone has the potential to be smart, but not everyone has the same pedigree. There was a wealth of knowledge in the places that we tend not to look. Just imagine, there could be a brain in the slums with the capacity to solve all of the world's problems. What is scarier than the knowledge and talent that we discovered, than the knowledge that we managed to overlook? I come from a two-parent household, both of them teachers, so it would be understandable for you to assume that I know what a good education is. But my definition of this word, education, was skewed in the classroom, the very place education is supposed to be reinforced. Now, I went to both private and public institutions, and from all of my experiences there, what I've gathered is this: education is merely memory in order to receive a grade. Simply a way of teaching students how to memorize certain skills and facts in order to pass a certain standard. Now let's compare this with the law of the land, the Department of Education. The mission statement of the Department of Education reads like so: to prepare students for global competitiveness, to promote educational excellence, to ensure equal access. Global competitiveness, educational excellence. Now I ask you, crowd, what is excellent about only a third of Atlanta students reading and writing on their respective grade levels? What is competitive about blanketing curriculum in order to address the average student while ignoring the best or the struggling? Now one might retort, oh, the Department of Education is in charge of education nationally. How can you possibly blame them for the mistakes of a singular school system? But a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Here's another question for you, crowd. If we take the Ford Model T car, first released in 1908, and compare it with the latest and greatest in Ford production, the Ford 2019 EcoSport, the differences are vast. The EcoSport is stronger, faster, and more durable than its ancient counterpart. But can we say the same for our classrooms? How has our classroom evolved since 1908? Mechanical pencils? Promethean boards? All of this means nothing if the style of teaching remains the same. We aren't changing the core element of education, and that could be our ultimate downfall. But notice how I said could. W.E.B. Du Bois once said, "The object of all true education is not to make men carpenters. It is to make carpenters men." This is the concept of holistic education, teaching the student how to be smart from all angles, rather than just simply teaching them to regurgitate information. Now, this style of teaching has been proven effective in many areas, but one I can speak most to is my experience with the Harvard Diversity Project. My instructors didn't just teach me how to perform well in debate, but they taught me how to think critically in any situation. They taught me how to figure out why I believe what I believe. They taught me how to encroach on spaces where I am not welcome and make way for the people behind me. They taught me how to stand on any stage, just like this one, and perform any speech with power, poise, and conviction. But everyone in Atlanta, or even America, doesn't have access to this type of learning. And it will be a crime, a travesty for a person who has seen the light not to go back and help his blind comrades. If we focus on evolving our classroom along with our technology, then we would truly be on the track to creating a smart city. Because as Malcolm X says, education is the passport to the future. For tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. We are all here embarking on a mission greater than just ourselves. We are all agents of change.
And as agents of change, we all want answers. But the one thing that I learned in the Harvard Diversity Project is that the wise man does not always pose the right answers. He just simply asks the right questions.
Now we've made it a theme throughout our speech to emphasize that a city is more than just numbers and skyscrapers. So instead of just asking what makes a city smart, we ought to be asking ourselves, what makes smart people?
Is a person smart because they use the exposure from adversity to promote the importance of diversity in thought?
Is a person smart because they choose to fill the gap of economic inequity with the wealth of knowledge? Honestly, I suppose that question is not up to us alone to truly know.
But the decision is up to you to dissect, investigate, and infiltrate the mindset of your city in order to make a difference. We've got to look past the numbers and statistics in this case, and perhaps the most important question we should be asking ourselves is, what will you do? What will you do in your family to ensure no matter how fogged a man's vision is, he can accomplish whatever it encapsulates?
What will you do at your job to make sure that the cycle of innovation and inspiration within your employees' hearts never stops moving?
What will you do at your city to ensure that your city doesn't just look smart, but that it has the audacity, the tenacity, and the accountability to actually be smarter?
A smart city will tell the truth.
A smart city will close the gaps.
A smart city will never, ever value profit more than it values its own people.
Thank you.
You.